Protecting our lakes, aquatic invasive species in Forest Lake. Zebra mussels and Eurasian water milfoil have been discovered in Forest Lake. These infestations were found during routine lake inspections and have been confirmed by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, or DNR. Eurasian water milfoil was discovered in parts of First and Second Lake of Forest Lake during a curly leaf pond assessment. The discovery of Eurasian water milfoil triggered the Forest Lake Lake Association's Aquatic Invasive Species Rapid Response Program. This calls for aggressive treatments of pioneering infestations in an attempt to try and eradicate these from Forest Lake. Eurasian water milfoil infestations on First Lake were chemically treated in July of 2015. A total of 30 acres were treated in First Lake. Other Eurasian water milfoil plants found in Second Lake were hand-pulled. Follow-up lake inspections are scheduled in the future. These inspections will be used to gauge the success of herbicide treatments and will provide data that will help guide future treatment plans. After zebra mussels were found on Forest Lake in First Lake, additional inspections found that eradication of zebra mussels from Forest Lake was not feasible due to their presence at multiple sites. With limited effective treatment options available, zebra mussels in Forest Lake will continue to be closely monitored, and a plan of action will be developed based on expert knowledge in best treatment practices. The following organizations have partnered and remain committed to managing and preventing the spread of aquatic invasive species. These are the Forest Lake Lake Association, Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, the City of Forest Lake, the Minnesota DNR, and Washington County. These partners will continue to fund the current Forest Lake Public Launch Boat Inspection Program in an effort to educate boaters about aquatic invasive species and protect the lake from other invasive species, and also help prevent the spread to other area lakes. Stay connected with the Forest Lake Lake Association website and help fight aquatic invasive species by visiting www.ourforestlake.com. Joining the Forest Lake Lake Association is one of the best ways to help fight aquatic invasive species. Information on joining the association can be found on this website or by contacting Steve Stegner, President of the Forest Lake Lake Association, at stevestegner@aol.com.
My name is Steve Stegner. I am the president of the Forest Lake Lake Association, and unfortunately at the very end of June we found Eurasian milfoil in Forest Lake, and also July 2nd we found some zebra mussels. So the Lake Association had put together a rapid response plan in the event we did find invasive species in the lake. So we put that plan into place, and what that entailed is we had activated a big group of people to go out and search both the water and the lake shores for the different invasive species. And once we did that, we kind of did an assessment within a couple of days, determined what our next plan of attack was. So in the Eurasian milfoil, we found about 20 different areas where Eurasian milfoil was present, scattered throughout the lake, and all of them were about 10 foot by 10 foot and smaller. So we sent divers down there to hand pull the Eurasian milfoil, and then we did a double herbicide treatment in those very small spot areas of the lake. And so we do hope that that has eradicated them. We won't really know until the end of the fall when we go out and we look at those places again to see if we've been able to eradicate them. But that's the good news. The good news is we found it. We were able to do some treatments on it. And then moving on to the zebra mussels, which that news wasn't quite so good. We found right around 8 or 9 zebra mussels in the lake on July 3rd. And so what we did is they were all along one shore, which were directly opposite of the boat landing that we're standing at. So what happens is those happen to be adults, so they were already breeding. They don't spawn, but they breed. And unfortunately, eradicating those is really, really tough because the female puts out into the water column 1 million eggs a year, And so they just drift all the way throughout the lake. So what we were hoping in our rapid response plan was to find some juveniles that hadn't started to reproduce yet. That means they're less than a year old. And at that point, we could cordon off the area and do a strong herbicide, hopefully in a close proximity to where we found them. That's not the case. They were fairly scattered and they were adults. The good news is, I suppose if there's any good news to be had, this lake is not really good for them to reproduce in. We have lots of sandy bottoms. Zebra mussels like to cling to rocks and other mussels like clams and things like that. So in the beach area, they're going to end up probably attaching to one another, and that'll be really easy for us on a regular basis to rake out those clumps of zebra mussels. But along the rocky shores, they'll be much more noticeable.
The Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District is a multifunctional organization originally authorized by state statute in 1955. Watershed districts have been obviously then managing water within those geographic areas delineated by the drainage of the water in a particular area. So it's sort of like, I tell people, like a school district, but our area is all the water that drains to one point. So that's what a watershed is. And so for the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, we're here in northern Washington County, in southern Chisago County. And so we have 10 lakes that we're actively managing, plus a number of smaller ones as well. With respect to the AIS activity, the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Board of Managers, of which there are 5, has been very active and I'd say proactive in leading efforts with respect to aquatic invasive species. There's been a number of things that they've done. In fact, looking at the boat launch inspections that have been done since about 2008 is one of the leading organizations regionally that has been doing that. And over the years, that's been increased more and more so. We currently have a fairly robust AIS activity and plan in place, covering a number of the lakes and the different activities, anything from purple loosestrife to curlyleaf pondweed, and as mentioned previously about the zebra mussels. So we have both from a planning standpoint, that's really kind of our forte, is being on the leading edge in the planning. We hire private consultants to come out and evaluate the lakes in different areas. We also work with local DNR state agencies and local county agencies as well in evaluating any particular area, and then setting a plan in place for action, for treatment and or eradication, as well as the prevention side, of course.
Yes, what we've implemented here this week is called the Flowering Rush Program, and the intent of this is to help eradicate the invasive species called flowering rush, eastern flowering rush. And this is a species that we believe came into Forest Lake sometime several years ago, not exactly sure when, anywhere from 7 to 10 years ago. And it has been continuing to spread across the lake relatively significantly every year. It's primarily only right now heavily in Third Lake, infested Third Lake. Second Lake is not that infested. First Lake, we have found no traces of flowering rush in First Lake. So the program we implemented, and we've been working on this for about a year now, is to actually, it's a two-pronged program. The first prong of it is that we are cutting flowering rush below the water line in water depths of about 3 feet or less. And water that is deeper than 3 feet, we actually are going to be applying a herbicide from boats, spraying it, which will actually help eradicate the flowering rush in deeper waters. And then the flowering rush that is very close to shoreline, like in less than a foot or foot and a half of water and to the shore itself, we're actually also spraying with a herbicide to kill that too. So it's been a week-long process, 4 days. We've been working out here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we intend to kind of repeat the program again in late August. I think many people are aware of all the unfortunate invasive species we got into the lake this year, or in the last month actually. And so, all we can ask people to do is to be diligent about their boating activities. make sure your boats and trailers are clean and all your bilge pumps and live wells are emptied, both in and out of the lake. That is how most of the invasive species are being spread today, particularly zebra mussels. Eurasian milfoil, attaches to trailers and boats. So, this is a common problem in the state of Minnesota right now, but people just need to be diligent with having clean boats, clean water wells and so forth in the boats as they boat.
Did you know that 70% of Minnesota boat owners do not live on a lake but use Minnesota lakes? The Minnesota DNR has produced some programs on aquatic invasive species and ways to protect our lakes.
The state of Minnesota is blessed with an immense wealth of natural wonders, thousands of pristine lakes, rivers, and streams. Minnesota also has a rich outdoor heritage with virtually unlimited access to boating, swimming, and fishing. But that heritage is now threatened by aquatic invasive species that jeopardize recreation and the delicate ecological order. It's time for us to take that threat seriously. More than 24 aquatic invasive species have invaded Minnesota's waters. Our challenge is to keep these invading species from spreading further and to prevent new ones from getting a foothold in our state. What do we mean by aquatic invasive species? They're plants and animals that live in the water and are not native to Minnesota. When these species are accidentally or intentionally transplanted into our waters, they can upset the ecological balance. No matter how they get here, the environmental consequences can be severe. Creatures like zebra and quagga mussels were transported in the late 1980s from the Black and Caspian Seas of Europe and Asia. They came in the ballast tanks of ocean-going ships and were unwittingly discharged from ballast water into the Great Lakes. New species of carp brought here from Asia are creating headaches both above and below the water's surface, and Eurasian water milfoil grows in the mats on the water's surface that interfere with swimming and boating and diminish the visual appeal of our lakes. These seemingly unrelated species share a common and disturbing trait. In our ecosystem, they lack disease and predator controls, so these non-native species reproduce and spread at an amazing pace. The consequence is that they compete with native species for food and habitat. This can dramatically affect commercial, tourism, and recreational uses of Minnesota's well-known lakes and rivers. Foremost among the invertebrate invaders are zebra mussels, small striped mollusks about the size of your thumbnail that multiply at incredible rates. Zebra mussels encrust rocks, docks, boats, and water supply intakes with a sharp coating of shells. Meanwhile, their larger but lesser-known relatives, quagga mussels, colonize deeper water. Like relentless underwater vacuum cleaners, zebra and quagga mussels voraciously filter algae and plankton from the water, taking food away from native clams and upsetting the natural balance in lakes and rivers. While this filtering may make the water clearer, it also reduces the food supply that sustains plants and fish. So, how are zebra and quagga mussels spread to new locations? These and other aquatic invasive species hitchhike in several ways: by attaching to things that have been in the water, by clinging to aquatic plants, and by being carried with the water itself. Once introduced to a lake or river, zebra mussels appear on docks, boat lifts, shallow rocks, and aquatic plants. Within a few years, an entire watershed can be infested. Sharp shells are attached to rocks and wash up on beaches, discouraging swimming. A loss of tourism dollars can follow. Less widespread, but grabbing lots of headlines, are carp from Asia, specifically the bighead and silver carp species, which pose a significant threat to Minnesota waters. Bighead and silver carp are voracious plankton eaters that strain the water of nutrients and outcompete native fish species for food. Originally stocked in aquaculture ponds in the south to control algae, floods allowed them to escape into the Mississippi River drainage and move upstream. They are prolific breeders, capable of virtually taking over entire stretches of river, altering the local fish community dramatically. While bighead carp eat more and grow larger, it's the high-flying silver carp that offer vivid evidence of the invasion. Approaching boats can scare entire schools of silver carp into leaping out of the water, causing serious injuries when they hit boaters and personal watercraft users. Eurasian water milfoil is one of the plant invaders which has become a nuisance in many Minnesota waters. The introduction of Eurasian milfoil to America can be traced to the aquarium trade, where plants were imported for use in fish tanks but ended up in local waters. Eurasian milfoil is an aggressive rooted plant that quickly grows to the surface. It spreads out across the water surface, forming an umbrella-like canopy that blocks sunlight and chokes out the native plants below. Milfoil forms dense, unsightly cover through which it's difficult to swim or navigate. Small pieces of milfoil carried on boats and recreational gear can seed a new invasion if they are carried to other lakes. Minnesota law requires everyone to clean off all plant material and any prohibited invasive species from their watercraft. To combat the spread of invasive species, there is a 3-step, easy-to-remember process called Clean, Drain, Dry. It only takes a few minutes for boaters and outdoor enthusiasts to apply these simple yet effective steps every time they leave a boat access or body of water. Many boaters have become accustomed to checking their trailers and watercraft for aquatic plant fragments in an effort to stop the spread of Eurasian milfoil. This procedure only takes minutes, and it can prevent a permanent infestation on another lake. This is not an optional activity in Minnesota. It's the law, and violators risk getting citations for not following the regulations. Now, in addition to looking for aquatic plants, it is also necessary to visually inspect and to feel the surface of boats and equipment for other aquatic invasive species, such as tiny zebra mussels. As you move around the boat, check the anchor and anchor lines for plants, snails, and mussels. On the trailer, check the rollers and trailer bunks and remove any plants. Check the trailer fenders and the entire length of the axle for any plants that may be clinging to them. Remove any plants that are snagged on the boat's lower unit and propeller, and lower the motor so it drains completely. Look closely at the lower unit and motor parts that are below the waterline for zebra mussels, snails, and other aquatic animals. Also inspect the hull and other boat equipment where these plants and animals could attach. Run your hand over the boat hull below the waterline and over the transom to detect if there are any tiny zebra mussels attached. Waterfowl hunters need to clean all plants, animals, and mud off their boats, trailers, waders, push poles, decoy lines, and decoys. Anglers should make sure their fishing lines and fishing lures are free of aquatic plants and animals. If you use a personal watercraft, clear all plants from the water intake, impeller, and trailer. Then run your engine for 5 to 10 seconds to blow out any remaining water and to eject any plants hidden in the water lines. To comply with state law, you must drain all water from your watercraft and any container or equipment that could hold water carrying invasive plants or animals. This means you must remove the drain plug to drain water from your bilge and then leave the plug out while transporting. You also have to drain your live well, bait bucket, any container, and recreational equipment. This includes the lower units of outboard motors and the water lines of personal watercraft. If you're a wakeboard boat user, you need to make sure you aren't carrying aquatic invaders in your ballast tanks. If you can't completely drain the ballast tanks, you should flush and decontaminate them by filling them with hot water. Anglers using live bait must take additional precautions as well. They must drain out the water in their bait buckets on shore and replace it with clean water if they want to save bait for future use. If you're a waterfowl hunter, you need to remember to drain your decoys as well as your boat. Because the law makes it illegal for you to transport aquatic invasive species, the DNR recommends some additional steps to help remove or kill aquatic invasive species that may be attached to your boats and equipment after cleaning and draining. Option 1 is to use hot water to rinse all areas of your boat, trailer, live well, and gear that have been in the water. This will kill invasive species such as zebra mussels. Option 2 is to use a high-pressure water spray on your boat and gear to remove invasive species. If effective cleaning equipment is not available, option 3 is to let your boat, gear, and equipment dry for at least 5 days. Allow any equipment that may have absorbed or collected water to air dry for at least 5 days as well. Following these clean, drain, and dry procedures will prevent you from giving any invading aquatic species a ride to another Minnesota river or lake. Aquatic invasive species pose a very real threat to the ecosystems of Minnesota's lakes and streams. Once invasive species arrive in new areas, there are no easy ways to remove them. The best way to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species is to take simple but effective steps of clean, drain, and dry every time you enjoy our state's waters.
Aquatic invasive species are the biggest threat today facing our lakes and rivers and our ability to use and enjoy them. We really need everybody, you included, to step up, take responsibility for our actions so that we can enjoy these resources today and future generations can as well.
If you have any questions about invasive species or how to fight the spread of them, please contact your local Minnesota DNR office or go to mndnr.gov for information and office locations.